All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Greg Writer,
And I'm Candace Writer.
and welcome to our podcast. We're excited today to have a very special guest on with us today. And I do want to share a little bit about him and a little bit about a relationship as well, too. So I met our guest, I don't know, years ago, and he came from some pretty, like, you have this idea that, well, he's all successful and he's just a rock star, but he has an amazing story that he just talked about not too long ago, how he crawled up from the gutters, and kind of like I did. And I don't know if we'll have him share that or not, but it's pretty interesting. But more importantly than that, our guest is spent tens of millions of dollars, maybe more than that, on advertising on Facebook and managing clients and doing just tons of e-commerce and ad spend and Facebook ads and that kind of stuff, Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And then his Facebook account got shut down. Literally in business, rocking, rolling, fantastic, doing great. Boom, shut off. And then I heard him talk on his one of his streams that he did, that not only did his Facebook ads get his whole Facebook account, so 12 years of pictures and history and everything gone. And I literally went and made a little note, and I'm like, okay, I got to go download all my pictures and all my history from Facebook because I do not want that to happen to me, and that can happen. So with that being said, but what was really cool is he took that tragedy and that terrible situation and turned it into something else amazing. He now is one of the top leading TikTok agency advertisers, and we'll have him explain that exactly what that is to us here in a few minutes. So with that being said, let me bring our guest on, Mr. Maxwell Finn. Welcome to our podcast with Candace, and this is the father-daughter podcast.
I think that's a good name. I think you come up with something that's father-daughter related. That'll be your name. You gotta play on that a little bit.
Well, in our intro, it says, which you guys have already heard by now, but it says, the wisdom of the old geezer, the creativity of the young whippersnapper, or something like that. So
I love it. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited.
All right,
this is an interesting format. We got the three.
I know.
I'm not used to being so narrow in scope in terms of my office view, so I make sure I'm perfectly situated.
Oh,
yeah, there we go. That's a little better of view there. But you can do whatever you want. It's your show. So if you want to go back to the individual pains, do it.
Well, I'm one of these guys. I like movement, so we'll be doing a little bit of all the above, right? So when I'm talking, maybe I'm like that, and we'll kind of go like
sickness,
this.
Yeah.
Exactly, motion sickness. All right, Candace, you start us off.
Okay, well, we always start off with mindset. So that will be my first question. I would like you to share with us your thoughts and the importance of mindset and how do you prepare yourself and your mind for success.
Yeah, I mean, this question could go a lot of places, right? So I think there's mindsets for when you're struggling, there's mindsets for when you're successful. There's different points in your career, different points in your journey, you need to be thinking slightly differently and be in different places. So I can speak more abstractly about just kind of a general mindset. I do love this motion. Now I'm totally solo on the screen. So this is the first podcast, first show I've done where there's been it's like a live production where they're just shifting between cameras in the production booth. So that's always fun and keeps me on my toes. But I mean, I think at a high level, mindset is everything, right? It's how you approach the day, how you think about what you're doing that day, how you think about your goals and what gets you excited, why you're doing what you're doing, what your big picture is integral to your success as an entrepreneur, because it's not easy, right? I think there's this belief that entrepreneurship, you see, these Zuckerberg and Bezos and Gates and all these examples, right, of incredibly successful entrepreneurs, and they don't get featured in media until they're already successful. So there's this perception that there's overnight success, and that's a thing. It's some kid starts a company in his dorm room or in his garage, and then a week later, Sequoia or Bessemer, some big VC funds there, here's a check for $50 million, your company's worth $1 billion, and they're just partying it up. It's not the way it goes, right? It's a multi-year, in some cases, a multi-decade journey for most people to be successful. So the only way you can get to that end destination is to be in the right state of mind and to take care of this every single day. And so for me, it's all about like, one, I make sure I take care of my health, right? So it's making sure you're taking time for you, that you're not just always working, that you're whether it's fitness, whether it's podcasting, whether it's reading books, whether it's going for walks, whether it's taking breaks from me and spending time with my family, and making sure that you're giving your brain a rest and that you're not overwhelming it. I think is important. I think the other big thing when you're talking about mindset is uh, working on something that you're really excited about. I think it's really hard to have a good and mindset. And by the way, I should have prefaced this. Anybody that's seen me on a podcast or a show before knows that I go on tangents. So feel free to, as I go, I have no idea how many questions you guys have. You could have like 30 questions and be like 30-second answers. So feel free to just interrupt me at any time and say like, hey, we got like 5 seconds for this question. Cause I can go on and on.
So here's my cue for that. So whenever it comes, when I bring this back on screen, that means we want to move to the next question. So we'll let you finish your thought on mindset.
Yeah.
Let me finish my thought there, and that's a good frame there. So, and by the way, it's a blessing and a curse being able to like go on these tangents. It's really good. People need me to kill time, but it's also like I can just go and go and go, right? But like from a mindset perspective, having a something that you're excited about, that you love doing, and having clear goals and milestones, I think are really important. Most people getting into the game on the entrepreneurship side don't have those things, right? They're getting into something because they just want to make money, and they don't have a big plan. They don't have a 3, 5, 10-year goal. And they're also not doing something that they love doing or are passionate about. And so it's really hard to stay positive and really hard to stay motivated and stay inspired and driven, all things you need to be successful, if you don't have those elements every single day.
Yeah, I think doing what you love is so important, especially in like the entrepreneurial space. I'm actually reading a book, Ashley Stahl, and it's called The U-Turn. And her whole thing is about like, you need to be in alignment with your core values of who you are, because you truly, like, you could be successful, but you could be miserable and unhappy. So I definitely love how you touched on like mindset, of course, and health, and then finding what it is that you love, and then, taking that.
Perfect.
Okay, so here's the next question I got for you, and this question is going to change a little bit because of something I watched from the other day. So I'm assuming everything's open limits here, but so I always want to ask, tell us something about you that you normally don't talk about, or you normally don't get invited to ask. And my normal answer to that is an example. I'm a hang glider pilot. I've been flying my whole life, but I really want you to take just a few seconds and touch on a video I watched from you just a couple days ago. And I want to also share with you that something different about me that I don't really ever talk about, that lots of people don't know, is I had a massive cocaine drug addiction when I retired from the securities industry in 1987. I literally was doing about an 8 ball of cocaine a day. And I was in that Wolf of Wall Street world when I owned my own broker dealer. Everyone was doing drugs. And I got so hooked on drugs that it almost destroyed my life and put me 6 feet under. And I saw a video about you the other day where you talked a little bit about that and then how you overcame that. So if you could share just a little bit about that people can come back from these travesties that seem like they're going to take us out.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I haven't spoke about in I've purposely not kind of talked about it for a very long time, but I'm far enough away from it now where I feel it's important to talk about because it impacts so many people and there's a stigma associated with it. But yeah, I mean, I when I was 18, I threw my back out and got prescribed Percocet from a doctor. And because I was 18, I didn't have to um, uh, you parents no longer need to be there and kind of get sign-offs, right? You're no longer a minor. And so I was able to kind of skirt all the safeguards that might usually be in place. And, long story short, that spiraled and led to one thing into another thing, and then led to a multi-year period of addiction and all the things that come along with that. And, fortunately for me, I was able to get out of it relatively quickly, right? When I went to inpatient rehab, there's inpatient and outpatient. When I went to inpatient to detox, I mean, there's people in there there was guys in there that were in their 50s, 60s, 70s that had, for decades, literally since they're probably 16, had been in, out. So it's, 2 years clean, relapse, 5 years clean, relapse. It's a circle and it just never ends. And so for me, I was lucky to I was able to get out of it, get clean, move on with my life, find other things to take a relatively kind of addictive personality and channel those into, good things. And then, relocating down to Florida, it's really important if you're in that place, if you're, in an addiction, like moving and cutting off connections is like the two most important things you can do. If you don't move, if you don't like physically move and physically like cut off every connection you have, it's almost impossible to stay clean, because it's when you have fleeting thoughts, it's too easy, right, to jump back in.
No, that's exactly what I did too. So I was starting a family, and I packed up and moved from Colorado to San Diego. That's how I ended up in San Diego, because I got clean, and I'm like, I still around all this, I got to get out of here. So I literally folded up tent and left. So, and I look at the success you have now, and you're now married, and you have a child, and it's like you're building a family. It's just amazing. So I want everyone to know hope. And then again, if you guys have an interest in hearing his testimony or my testimony, you can comment on this, and then we'll go ahead and find those links for you and put that underneath you. But let's go ahead and move on to the question. So this whole podcast is about launching and scaling and succeeding and growing with your business. And Max has done a ton of that, but Candace has the first question coming at you.
Okay, well, since you brought it up, we're going to now just, we talked about mindset. We talked about, a little bit about your story. So now we're going to move into the launch and scale portion of the interview. So my question is, what is the number one best advice you can share with a person like me, who I'm actually launching a business? So what is your number one best advice that you can give to someone like me launching a business?
That's a great question. It's a loaded question, right? Because in the sense that like it is, there are so many. Let me answer that question with a like kind of a frame, right? So I think it's a great question, right? I think that question, like, what should I do? What should I be thinking? I think there's a limiting factor on that question, which is like breaking it down to one thing, right? I think there, and again, I know you guys have to do this, and it's not specific to your question. This is like a very common, question and topic people talk about, but like, I think there's this belief in entrepreneurship, marketing, pretty much anything in life, right? That there's like, I need one thing, right? There's like one best piece of advice or one tip or one mindset or one strategy that like, this is the single most important thing. And it's universally the single most important thing. The reality is that like, I could tell you one thing. I could say, hey, find something you love. And I genuinely believe that. We kind of talked about it before. I genuinely believe that like, that's probably one of the more important things, because you are going to hit periods a month in, 6 months in, 2 years in, 3 years in, where it is really hard, and you are going to doubt yourself, and you're going to want to quit, and you're not going to be as successful as you thought you were going to be yet. And if you aren't having fun and aren't passionate, you're going to quit. Like that's guaranteed, right? So there's things like that. But at the same time, it's like, what type of business are you building, right? Where are you at financially? Where are you at career-wise? Are you, still in college? And we're talking about you here, really. Are you still in school? Do you have a family? Like those things, dictate what you should be focused on, where your priorities should be, just your circumstances in life, your circumstances in the business, type of business you're running. So it's a hard question to answer, because it's everyone listening to this is in a different place and starting a different business. And it might be their first business, maybe their fifth business. They might have failed before. They might never failed before. They already have, lots of capital lined up. They might have no capital lined up. Right. So based on all of that, it's like, the advice that I would give you is going to be radically different. It's going to be most useful. So maybe if you want to send it back to me, like, hey, like, this is kind of where I'm at. Like, what should I do? Like kind of a little more context around it. So I can give a more valuable response.
Well, I got to say, I like that question in your answer, because that's the point, right? The point is, if you're going to launch a business, there's not one thing you can do. Right? There's a sequence of things you can do. And as a former investment banker and a guy that's coached thousands of entrepreneurs, I'm always coaching about sequence and what do you need to do next? Like, what's the first thing to get your mindset right, get your vision right, write your goals down. So anyway, I think that's a great answer as far as like, there's just not one thing you can do to launch your business. Now, how about you, Candace? Is that an acceptable answer for you?
No, yeah. Well,
That's all
I
that
just
matters,
keep,
right?
yeah, no. Well, I just like, you once again brought up like, find what you love, do what you love. And I love that, because I'm 27 and I've been with my dad for 7 years now. So I've kind of been thrown into so many different like positions, and I'm learning all this. And I feel like that this past 2 years, I'm finally for once figuring out what I love, like what I've learned, and I'm applying that into the business that I'm launching, but I think I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if I haven't figured out what I like and love. So I just
Yeah.
like how you.
Yeah, I think you need, so that's a valid point. It's like, it's easier said than done. It's easier to
Yeah.
say, do what you love. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's a period of time. This is why I think it's also like, not every single person needs to go right into entrepreneurship, right? Not every
Mhm.
single person like needs in college need to be, I'm gonna, like what I did, which is I started my first company when I was in college. I've never worked for anybody my entire life, right? Like that, it sounds fun. It sucks. Like
Yeah.
I've made a lot of sacrifices for that to happen and lost a lot of money. I mean, it was brutal for the first decade pretty much. But like, if you aren't really confident what you want to do, like going and working for somebody, going and
Yeah.
working different industries is a great way to find them. Be like, wow, this sucks. I hated this. So I definitely know I don't want to do
Mhm.
this, but like you might go over here and find like, I really love this. Like when media buyers come work for us on the agency side, it's like, I get this now. I see this. And like, I'm going to go start my own agency. And they got this
Yeah.
amazing crash course on how to build an agency, how to run ads like I do. And now they can go out and they have a lot more success. And they also got paid a good salary to learn and to build that up so they can
Yeah.
build a little cash cushion.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. Great stuff. All right. So my next question for you is, so going back to, you got the launching side of things. Now let's talk about the scaling side of things. And you're one of those rare guys that we can interview that have launched businesses from the ground up, or launched products from the ground up, launched agencies from the ground up, and then you've scaled businesses. And I've seen you scale products, especially in the e-commerce space. I've seen you scale products, like whether it's an affiliate offer or whether it was a product tied to something else. I've seen you scale to millions of dollars in months and months, in a matter of months. So can you talk to us about what's a really good tactic or strategy if I'm at that point where I want to scale or I need to scale? What should I need to know going into that?
Yeah. So totally. And it's good you kind of break this down. This is a great format for a show because they're so different. Like launching a
Mhm.
business versus scaling a business, radically different. That's why also you see like most like founders of companies end up getting replaced once they get to like a series C, series D round, because what it takes to come from like 0 to 10 million, very different than 10 to 100, very different than 100 to a billion, right? Like, so radically different skill sets and tools needed. I think when you look at scaling, what we've seen, because we've worked with lots of very, very large businesses that are doing hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars a year, they have so much dialed in, right? Meaning like they know exactly what they can pay to acquire a customer. They know exactly what that customer is worth over 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. They have all of the KPIs in place. And because they're really good at getting repeat customers, maximizing lifetime value, because they have things like continuity, recurring revenue, they are able to pay a lot more than most businesses to acquire the same customer. And that's really what we're seeing in the paid media landscape right now. The brands that are winning and the businesses that are scaling the fastest and doing the biggest volume are all willing to dramatically outspend the rest of the businesses to acquire the same customer, right? Like what ClickFunnels pays to acquire a customer, what Onnit pays to acquire a customer, what all these big, what Snow pays to acquire a customer, right? It's way higher than what most people would be willing to pay that are coming into the space to compete with them, because they're willing to break even or even lose money acquiring the customer because they know their back end is so strong and they know what the lifetime value is. So that's really the X factor when it comes to scaling right now.
No, I love that. And again, so if you're sitting here and you think you're ready to scale and you don't have the systems and technology in place to track, so you can optimize every single step along that ascension ladder, then you're not ready to scale. So,
Yeah.
right. So if you got to be able to track everything, and then obviously know your KPIs, which, for those of you who are like launching, and Candace, do you know what a KPI is?
Well, I don't remember what it stands for, but I brought it up to you like a couple of months ago.
Oh, that's right. Key performance indicators. So I want you to remember that.
Mm.
Key performance indicators. You always got to know what your KPIs are, because those are the things you want to track and monitor and scale, right?
Yep.
Very
Mhm.
cool. All right. So I got a question for you about you. You've built some businesses and you've had some teams. And in this day and age of these younger generation of social media, culture is playing such a huge part in building a business. Like when I was running my business in the 80s and even in the 90s and maybe even going into the year 2000, the word culture never came up. Like I don't remember ever talking about culture. Now, of course, there was a culture, and of course, we had a certain thing, but now anymore culture is brought up and talked about a lot. So I want you to share with us with your business and your mindset or your philosophy. Actually, is more better word. What do you feel about culture, and how do you create the kind of culture that you feel is going to maintain your team, your employees, and give them a rewarding relationship with your business?
I mean, transparently, like I'm not a operator, so I think the key is like putting the right people in places
Mm.
of power within your company that are really good at things like operations, that are really good at things like team building and HR, and understanding that you might have weaknesses and other people have strengths, right? So for me, it's like Jeremy and I, my partner, we're idea people, right? We're creative people, we're idea people. We want to do big deals, and that's entrepreneurs. Like we're always on to the next thing, right? So what we realized years ago is like that's good, but the problem is like if you just move on to the next thing and nothing is in place here, like that thing goes to zero. So we started recognizing we need to put the right people in place at these different businesses that can then run them. And so that's what we look for our different companies. Like, hey, we're going to put this individual in place here to be the CEO or to operate this brand, this company. And part of one of their skill sets is hiring and is bringing on the right people and is developing a really good workplace. I think it's a little more unique nowadays because everything is remote, and we've always been a remote company pretty much. We've had offices, downtown, but like, it's been 5-10% of our workforce actually worked in person. And once COVID hit, it's like 100% is remote. So I think what you need to build a great work culture today online is very different than you look at, like the Facebooks and the Googles, where it was all about, we need to have a spa and dry cleaning and, 5-star chefs and all this stuff. I think for us, it's more about like, how can you create a sense of like family and community where people just know each other and they're open to share, and we're sharing ideas. And so we do little things like, every Monday we have a team Google Meet, and every week we have a different team member lead that call and come up with some type of unique thing. So sometimes we do different, we do games like Wordle. Sometimes we do scavenger hunts. Sometimes we do, just 10 questions to answer. Like sometimes we'll do a deep kind of personal development exercise. But each week, everyone's learning something fun and unique about somebody else. And then every day, we're dropping a prompt in Slack that's some type of activity or question or goal setting that everyone's engaging with. So little things like that, where you're just encouraging socialization, you're encouraging community building, go a really long way, and giving people a sense of ownership, right? So you're letting different people in different departments and different levels of the company lead calls and feel a sense of ownership in that.
Wow.
I love
That's very
that.
cool. That's super
Yeah.
cool.
Because I think that's like right now, like it's pretty cool that I feel like we're moving into this, like we can work from home. But then for me, like right before the pandemic hit, we did have a full office. Now we did have a lot of people not in office, but our office was growing. So it was definitely fun to go to work and have that like human contact and socialization. So even though remote is fun, it's like, I think I love what you shared, because it's like, yeah, how do we still build like this strong, close team?
Yep.
So wait, what's the scavenger hunt? How do you do that? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we'll do things. I think one of our team members did it like 4 weeks ago, and it was basically they said it was like, bring this. So it was like a clue. And then the first 3 people that brought it back got, like, the first person got X points, second person got next most points, third person got next points, right? So you had to be like fast to go
Oh,
get
yeah,
things in your house. So it
that's
was, again, just
cool.
like a little clue, little riddle, and then people had to solve it and then be really fast. Or even like little activities, like one of the team members did, grab something in your office that's within reach and like tell a story. Like, what does it mean to you? Like, what's the story about it, right? So these are just little personal things that everyone gets to know each other a little deeper.
Oh,
Now that's
wow.
super cool, because you think about the idea of creating a culture and that team building where everyone's remote. It's
Yeah.
so critical, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to take some of those ideas and
Yeah.
then implement
We
those.
are.
Like we have our team meetings every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. So tomorrow morning we're going to have something going on. So that's awesome. All
Yeah.
right. All right, Candace, you got the next question. Tee it up.
Okay. So I believe, like, in order to succeed, we need to fail. Like, we truly learn from our failures. It's our biggest teacher. So can you share a failure that you had in your career and how you learned from it and what you took away from it?
I mean, the question should be like, pick one of the hundreds of failures, right? Like the reality is, like, this is one of the biggest problems with social media is that people are able to put out a picture that's carefully curated and edited, right? And so when you see somebody's Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever it is, like, you're seeing a fraction of a second of a entire 24-hour day of a 7-day week of a 365-day year, right? Like, everybody has bad shit that happens, right? Everyone has stuff that's happening. Everyone's going through stuff. Very, very few people actually share any of the negative stuff or any of the challenges they're having, right? Nobody wants to be vulnerable or seem like they're not doing great. So I think that the first thing to start is, like, recognize that everybody, even those big people that you follow, like, you look at Cardone or Vaynerchuk or any of these guys, like, they're failing a lot, right? Like, they're having, challenges, they're having issues, they're having, all kinds of stuff going on, right? For me, I mean, it's like, I've had numerous companies fail, right? Like, I think multiple companies failed at different degrees. My first company failed. My first agency failed. My first e-commerce store kind of failed. I was able to sell it, but, like, it was still, I consider it wasn't, a lot of money. I still consider it kind of a failure. And so I think what you learn pretty quickly after the first one is that the world doesn't end, right? So you have this belief that, like, I get one shot at this. And so I get to start one company. And if that company doesn't work, that's my shot, right? And I got to go back to 9 to 5 and this, right? Once I realized, because I was, like, towards the end of that startup, was very concerned. I just got out of college. I had no money, no savings, no nothing. And I was like, I had no other idea, no partners or anything. So, like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't foresee a world or a life after this company, because I'd lived and breathed this for 2.5 years. All I'd done, all I knew, all I wanted to do. But then, things happen. You realize this opportunity arises and you meet this person, and it just builds and builds and builds. And then over time, you make more introductions, you make more connections, you meet more people, you do more deals, you build your network, you build your skill set. And then it becomes easier and easier to know, like, hey, even if I fail here, like, I have this going on. If I fail here, I have this going on. If I fail here, I know this person. So it almost, like, your risk decreases over time the longer you've been in the game, because your relationship capital and your relationship equity that you've built. But yeah, just knowing, like, if it's your first startup, your first company, that there is a high, I don't want to be negative or doom and gloomy, but there is a high likelihood, just based on statistics, that you're going to fail. It's just the numbers are not in business owners' favors that you're going to be successful, right? So just know that this is a high likelihood, but it doesn't matter. What matters is what I do once that's done, right? What's the next thing I'm going to do? The next thing and the next thing. And as long as you keep doing and you don't quit, you can be successful, right? It might take a decade, it might take 20 years, but, like, as long as you just keep going and don't quit, and you love what you do and you get better and better and better at what you do, you're bound to be successful at some point.
And then it goes back to that definition of success, but also your perspective on failure, right? So if you anticipate that failure, as you just stated, is going to be part of your journey, right? It's not a race, it's the marathon storyline that you can kind of overcome that. But let me kind of follow on that with this question then. So when a guy like you, and everyone hears that story about you're going to become the 5 people you hang around, and there's obviously something to that. We even talked about that in the beginning, going, like, you're getting off an addiction, you got to get away from those people, right? So, but with you and your business, when you get stuck, or you're in a place where you're beating your head against and you need help, what does Maxwell Finn do when you need help?
I mean, I need help all the time. So and this is what's mind-boggling to an extent is, and I'll answer that question, but let me just throw this one caveat, this one additional kind of thing in here. Like, you talk about perspective. What's going to happen also, so there's the expecting failure and realizing that failure is going to happen. But I think the other important thing to remember is that you need to constantly reflect on where you're at and what you viewed a year ago or 5 years ago as success. Because that's I think the biggest danger of this. And I still deal with this all the time. And luckily, you know, my amazing wife's always like reminding me of this. Otherwise I'd be just doomed. But like what I viewed as life-changing success, where I would be eternally happy 5 years ago, I have today. But like the bar changes, right? So now I'm like, what I view as successful is based on like some crazy other scale. And I'm sure if when I hit that, I'm going to not be content there either. So I think that's also just an important thing to remember. And the reason I brought that up is because the people now that I have on my phone that I talk to on a regular basis, that I could text with a question, is every person that, again, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, for some of these people, I followed. I would have like, you know, would have killed to just like meet them and like shake their hand. Right. The fact that like, you know, I could pick up the phone and you know, call a guy like Rich Shefford, who's become an incredible friend and mentor of mine. It's like a legend in the industry. The fact that I can like, I was just talking with, you know, Taylor Welch, who's a friend of mine the other day, another amazing partner. The fact that like, you know, Lo Silva and Josh Snow are great friends. I can text them. The fact that like, you know, Russell with ClickFunnels, like they were our first TikTok client, and we've talked, you know, we talked and I sold the business to them. Like these people that are just, you know, legendary marketers and entrepreneurs and people that I have access, not just like access to them, but also like friend relationships with many of them is wild. So when I need help, which again is on a weekly basis, regular basis, it just you know, I have a list of people that it's like, this is the best person in the world that does X or Y or Z. Like I'm going to shoot him a text or say, hey, can we have a call and can we chat about something? And I'm very, very fortunate to have that access, that network.
I think it's humbling to hear that you are like, oh, I always need help. And I'm also not afraid to ask for help and get that support, whatever it is. Because I feel like I've come across a lot of people where they kind of have a guard up, or maybe it's a high ego, I don't know, where they're like, I could never ask, or I can't text them, or I can't call them. So I just like that you brought that up. And also how like 3-5 years ago, you're like, there are people I looked up to. Like I have a new Instagram account, and it's the one I had my personal account for like literally since Instagram first happened, and now I finally clean slate, and I'm only following people, of course, like close friends and family, but like anyone who it could be a potential mentor or who I want to model and mimic. So I'm definitely like changing my whole environment. So
that's great.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
No, and you think about that, and I think about myself. And just maybe this will help some listeners as well. And that is, I'm one of those guys that I don't feel it's like an ego thing. I think it's just I don't think of asking for help. But there probably is an ego thing in there too, right? So it's like I'm just trying to be aware of when I get stuck to go and ask for help, because I surely have given help and helped people, thousands of entrepreneurs over the last 10 or 15 years. And I'm in a place in my life where I'm asking for help more than ever, because I'm doing something I've never done before. And I need, and like Max said, I need help all the time. Right. So it's just like, you have to be willing to ask for help. And again, going back to the perspective and the reflection, I love that, right? Because the perspective is you're going to get stuck. And if you recognize that, and then you reflect back on what's going on. But I think the other thing too, that just to point out, it's obvious, but I'm going to say it, it's the relationships you build. Your relationship capital is probably the most valuable. There's two things to me that's the most valuable. It's the information you put between your ears, right? That you learn through learning and education and mentors and things like that. And then it's the relationships that you build, and then the relationship capital that you have. So, and I'm grateful to have Max on here, because, you know, and he's helping us out at LaunchCart. And so I'm grateful for your relationship capital that we have, and getting your advice when we need it. So pretty cool.
Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah. Everything is a good word to wrap that one up with. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to tie up today's podcast with is money matters. So as a guy who grew up, you know, with the Rich Dad Poor Dad story and investing and managing money, and I've totally made tons of mistakes, and I actually got away from investing for decades. But money matters. Cash flow matters. How you manage your business. So I'd like to get your perspective that kind of ties a little bit into the money management, maybe, or even, you know, what you do with your profits, so you can, you know, build something to where at some point you can retire and you have money and you have investments and you have wealth. The difference between making money and creating wealth.
Yeah, I mean, And transparently, again, going back to just, when you ask for help and you're humbling, like I'm still on this journey, right? So I'm not I wouldn't consider myself the most successful person financially, or the wealthiest person. Not even, I'm just not, right? I would, the caveat to that is I'm making a more money than I ever thought I would. And that reflects when I have to pay when you get to a point where you're kind of paying the IRS more than you used to make in good year, like it starts to get a little crazy. I think from a kind of financial management standpoint, both like personally and business wise, one of the things that I wish I did earlier, and I could still always do a better job of, is not getting attached to money, wanting to hold it, but instead thinking about this is a tool, and how can I leverage this tool to be able to acquire things that produce more of it, right? And so for me, and I think this is a trap a lot of entrepreneurs fall into, and a lot of people fall into, is when you spend so many years barely making ends meet, and like struggling to pay bills and basic things, when you start making a little bit of money, your instinct is to hoard it, right? And that was my instinct for the first kind of year and a half, 2 years, was like, I'm just going to keep it in a bank account. Like, I don't want to risk it. I don't want to, it's like, I work so hard to make something, and not like a ton of money, but like, tens of thousands of dollars, but like, I want to just keep that in here and like not do anything with it. And then, you miss market moves. I missed like the whole, COVID boom and stuff, like, because you just sit on money. And so it wasn't until, the last 2 years or so where I started to look at it more as like, hey, I need like to actually deploy this. I need to actually leverage this. I need to be doing smart things with my money. And again, not being reckless, and making sure you're diversified. I think that's another big thing, is there's smart investing and there's just reckless investing and gambling, like putting, 100% of your money into crypto, 100% of your money into one asset class, right? That's stupid. It should be diversified. Ezra Firestone gave me probably one of the best pieces of advice a long time ago, years and years ago, before I was even making decent money. He said, what we do for a living to make our money is high risk. So my investments shouldn't be high risk also. He said, like, my income's high risk, my investments are low risk. So, guys like him, that's like most of their investments go into low risk things. They go into mutual funds, they go into real estate, they go into things that have far less volatility, that maybe they're not going to, go up 1,000% like some crypto token, but they're also not going to lose 99.9% of their value in one day. Being, like, you look at Luna, it's the top 10 crypto. It literally went to zero essentially within a matter of hours. It was a top 10 cryptocurrency, right? There was people that had a lot of their money, a lot of their net worth tied up in that. And that's reckless and crazy. So for me, it's, how can I diversify? How can I, look at kind of boring investments and not spend too much time on it either? Let smarter people that, do this for a living manage it. Because, and this last thing I'll say about this, going back to like the numbers not being in your favor for being successful when it comes to starting a business, the numbers are also not in your favor by a much bigger percentage for day trading. Like, they've done study after, this as an investment, like, working on Wall Street, like, people believe like I can beat the market, right? If you look at the statistics, even the best money managers, even the best wealth managers over the long run, I'm talking decades, almost none of them actually beat the market. Like, if you just put money into the S&P, right, or the Dow, like, or the NASDAQ, and just let it sit there for 30, 40 years, very, very few people on a professional level beat that. So like, why would I spend all this time that could be used to grow more income trying to beat the market to eke out like a few extra basis points, when I can just like, here's 10 grand a month, like, you take this, and Chase, my guy over there, Fernando, like, do it. You do this. 3,000 goes in this life insurance policy that builds up cash value. Another thing goes here, some crypto, like, it just does it. It's boring, but I don't have to worry. I don't think about it. It's done. And then I just continue to focus on building businesses and building income.
Yeah. No, I always want to bring that up because I got away from it and I want to get back to it. And I always tell, like I've been telling Candace, you got to get an Acorns account. And Acorns takes a little bit of money from every credit card transaction and puts it in like a mutual fund. And like, is that ever going to grow and make you wealthy and have retirement money? Well, probably not, but it makes it top of mind, right? And the idea is you have to take some of your money and get your money to make you more money. You hire your money to work for you. right? And actually, that's I heard Robert Kiyosaki say that yesterday. It's like if you're not putting your money to work for you to make you more money, you're never going to create wealth and freedom and longevity. So
especially with inflation, especially with
oh,
eight
especially
eight
with
percent
inflation.
inflation. If you're keeping
Yeah.
your money in a checking account right now, you're losing essentially 8% a year on that money. Can I say one more thing to your acorns thing, and
Absolutely.
then I'll shut up. Like there's this belief, kind of what you said, which is like small contributions are insignificant. Like if I want to retire with millions of dollars, I need to have tons of money put into the market. The sum of money matters far less than the time and frequency, right? So the stat I always like to reference, which I think is just fascinating, is if at 16 you start putting $50 a month into just a mutual fund, an index fund that just tracks the market, and you continue to put $50 a month in every month and just increase the contributions every month and year for inflation to match inflation, you have $1 million when you retire. Like
Yep.
that's and that's assuming 8% annualized return, which is pretty conservative on over the long run. Like that's a staggering statistic. How $50 a month contributions can lead to $1 million because of compounding interest, right? This power of time. If you start when you're 40, that number has to be a lot higher. So it's like younger people should start. We need to like push financial literacy and financial education way more in our country. That's the best way to set the future up for success, is to get like high schoolers to understand that stat. Okay, you don't need to have tens of thousands of dollars investing in the market every year to be rich when you retire. You need to put like 50 to 100 bucks a month away, and you can have a few $1 million when you retire, because you're obviously going to start contributing more once you make more. But that's just like at a minimum level, 50 bucks a month when you're in your late teens.
And people say, well, I can't afford to do it. And I promise you, when you get in the habit of doing it, you'll figure out a way to afford it.
Yeah.
Right. And I used to teach, and I want to get back to this, the 70-10-10-10 rule. And the 70-10-10-10 rule is that you take 100% of the money you get, 10% you tithe it, 10% you put it in savings for that flat tire, that car, something goes wrong with something, right? And that's still an investment account. And then 10% is long-term investments, and you forget about it. You never touch it, right? You're going to take the Warren Buffett approach, going, what business do you think is going to be here 50 years from now? Is that Tesla? Put some money in Tesla. And what's really cool about today is you can buy fractional shares.
Yep.
So if you wanted to go buy one share of Tesla, I bought two yesterday and it was like $665 a share. What if you don't have $665? You only have $100. You can buy a fractional share of Tesla. You couldn't do that when I was a kid. Right?
You couldn't do that even a few years ago.
Right. So that's so cool about money investing. But I really just want to make sure everyone that hears our voice that, look, we want to help you launch your business. We want to help you scale your business at that point. We want to introduce you to people that can help you and scale you. But you also have to consider the money and the management of your money and your business and watching your numbers. And really, as the entrepreneur, you can only depend on you, right? So think about that. Okay, Candace, we're wrapping it up. That's the end of all of our questions. How are we going to wrap this up? Oh yeah, we have a couple things here on the wrap up.
Yeah, we have our little supposed to be our speed questions, but you don't have to answer it quickly. Just our wrap up is I'm going to go. He's going to go. What's the best book launchers should read? Anyone in the middle of launching a new business or their fifth business, what is the best book for that launchers should read?
Wow, there's so many good books. It's like a big challenge of what's the best. I think like it depends what industry you're in. Like two of my favorite books that I think this is more on just the marketing and sales side, which I think are integral to launching it. I mean, those are the two most important things. One is called Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, and one is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which I think are two books I've read in the last year that are just amazing books, wildly different, but really, really good books.
I keep hearing of the Alchemy one, so I have to check that one out.
Yeah, Alchemy is a must read.
And is there a book on the scaling side?
On the scaling side, I think the at least for me, like the books that I've read that have been most useful are more like biographies, right? So like right now I'm reading Thomas Edison's biography, reading about, Walt Disney, reading just any of the books, Jobs is like that are because that gives you a really unique insight into what it takes to build these massive organizations, right? And there's one I'm about to actually just added it to my my Audible book. It's called Lights Out. I'm gonna read. It's about kind of the rise and fall of GE. That's another great book for like first like think about scaling is like not just what it takes to build a company, but like what are mistakes of some of these massive institutions that became the biggest companies and failed, or like are nothing with they're a shadow of their former selves. Like where do they go wrong? Even I was just reading the last. I know it's supposed to be rapid fire. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
There's so many ideas here. Like there's also I just listened to a great 4-part series on MySpace. It's a podcast called Business Movers, which is a great podcast. They do like multi-part series about like big businesses. And so it's a story of MySpace and the rise and fall of that company. Amazing. I think it's like an hour in full. It's like pretty quick, 4 parts. Each one's, 30 minutes or so, maybe 2 hours. But fascinating about just start there, the rise, and then News Corp buying it, and then just how they corporatized it and destroyed it, and how Facebook came around and just all the stuff that led to their eventual failure.
Ate their lunch.
Okay. What is the number one thing we can do and our listeners can do to help and support you?
I don't need it. I'm a bad asker. I'm really for somebody that's built an entire career in marketing and selling things of other people's stuff. I'm a terrible person. Like I'm terrible at selling and pitching my own stuff. Just follow me on social. Like I'm I have things I sell, but like I don't want to pitch anything. I don't need to pitch anything. But yeah, on TikTok at Maxwell_Finn, on Instagram at MaxFinn. I share a lot of content and a lot of free stuff, so that's the best place to go.
Okay.
Yeah, do that for sure. All right, one quick question, then we're going to call it a day. I think I know the answer, but there is a question coming in. Where do you recommend to spend your ad spend, Facebook or TikTok, for paid marketing?
Loaded question. So I not even loaded is the wrong word. Trick question. I think it's don't pick. Like this. I'm not trying to pick on whoever. Somebody is this live? Is somebody like asking while we're talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to pick on whoever asked the question, but it's there's this mindset where it's like it's absolute or binary. It's like I gotta spend all my money on Facebook or all my money on TikTok. It's like, no, diversify. I'm on TikTok right now. That's where I spend a lot of money, but we still run a lot of media buying on Facebook. I don't do it because I can't do it, but we have media buyers in a team. Like, do what's working and test other things. You should be trying YouTube, you should try TikTok, you should try Snap, even though they just lost 40% of their value today. You should try Twitter. You should look at for our political businesses, we advertise on, we do newsletter sponsorship, email rentals, direct mail. We do influencer marketing. Like, there are an infinite number of ways to reach customers, and some may work for you, some may not, but you need to test and diversify so you're not dependent on somebody else's business for your success.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, with that, everybody, I want to say thank you for tuning in. We hope you continue to join us on these podcasts. A little bit of the recap. We heard a little bit about, how do you deal with failures? And if it's not your genius, it's not your job. The idea about the mindset and the philosophy and the sequence of things. So make sure, if you have to listen to this again, please like and subscribe, share this, refer it to all your friends, anything and everything you can to help us grow. We genuinely want to help you with your launching, your scaling, your growing, and you're succeeding at business. And with the wisdom of the old man and the creativity of the young women, Candace, and this is the Father-Daughter podcast coming at you. So Candace, I'll let you finish it.
You took my line, but just what he said. Please like and subscribe, and please follow Max. Please follow Greg and Candace on Instagram, or we're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Greg Writer, Candace Writer, and wake up every day with an attitude of gratitude and tell somebody you love them.
Thank you, everybody. We're signing off. Thank you, Max.
Thanks, guys. Bye.